My name is Michael Turner. I'm 42 years old, and until recently, I was the Senior Director of Strategic Accounts at one of the fastest growing software companies in the country. I wasn't just good at my job, I was the reason we landed 60% of our total annual revenue last year. But none of that mattered, because 2 months ago, the new CEO walked into my office and fired me. I still remember the exact moment. It was 9:03 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was finalizing a renewal proposal for our biggest enterprise client, one that would have locked in $17 million in recurring revenue. And then came the knock. A polite, almost rehearsed knock. He stepped in, wearing his usual navy suit, not a wrinkle out of place. Behind him, HR followed like a shadow. I already knew what was about to happen, but I didn't interrupt him. I let him say the whole thing about realignment, new leadership direction, and tough decisions at the top. All corporates speak for. You don't fit in our new plan. No thank you. No recognition. No transition period. Just, you'll need to collect your things by noon. And I did. Quietly. But here's what he didn't know, and what the board forgot in their rush to crown a savior CEO. I built the accounts that built this company. I recruited the people who carried it. I mentored the managers who led it. And now? They were all watching. They watched me walk out of that building, with my box of memories, and 15 years of loyalty shoved into a manila envelope. And I told myself one thing. Stay silent. Let the storm build. Let them underestimate you. Because the fire that's coming, it won't be loud. It'll be surgical. But I wasn't angry, not yet. I was numb, confused, disoriented. I went home that day to my wife and 2 kids, and for the first time in over a decade, I didn't know how to answer the question. How was work, Dad? I smiled and lied. But inside, something was shifting. A quiet, slow-burning realization. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was personal. And what came next? Even I didn't expect it to shake the entire executive board. When the board got that anonymous envelope, that's when the panic truly began. Shows the before, stable, hopeful life. Includes warmth, respect, rising career. Subtle red flags, but nothing obvious. For most of my adult life, I believed in one simple rule. If you work hard, stay loyal, and bring results, you'll be safe. You'll earn respect. You'll be part of something bigger than yourself. And for 15 years, that rule held true. I joined Sentinel Technologies back when we were nothing more than a rented office space in downtown Denver and a dream pitch to venture capitalists. Just 11 employees. A CRM product we were still debugging. No real revenue. I was employee number 12. Back then, I didn't care about titles. I was just happy to be in the room. I poured everything into that company. 12-hour days, weekends, late-night client calls across time zones. I helped us land our first $100,000 deal. Then a $1 million one. Eventually, I was leading our strategic accounts team, managing high-profile clients that practically funded our expansion. Our CEO at the time, Dave Renner, was a builder. Quiet guy. Cared about people. He wasn't flashy, but he noticed things. He knew who was loyal. Every year during our holiday party, Dave would stand up, raise a glass, and say, "The ones who carry the weight aren't always the loudest. But we see you. And we thank you." That meant something. I still remember one night, about 5 years ago, I was on a video call with a client at 1:30 a.m., walking them through a crisis on their side. My wife brought me coffee and just sat quietly next to me the whole time. After I hung up, she asked me, "Do they even know how much you give to this company?" I smiled. "They don't have to. It's my job." But deep down, maybe I wanted them to. Because slowly, as the years went on and the company got bigger, the tone started changing. Dave stepped down after a health scare, and the board brought in a flashy new leadership coach turned interim CEO. Young, MBA type, big on disruption, wore more Rolexes than ideas. At first, I ignored it. I figured, this is how growth works, right? But then came the new hires. Directors who never held a client meeting but made double what we did. Layers of management who spent more time in meetings than solving problems. One day, I walked past a glass-walled meeting room and saw 3 executives trying to explain how my client success process was inefficient. None of them had ever been on a single call with a customer. That was the first crack. Just a flicker of something off. Then came the reorgs, the budget freezes, the slow disappearance of recognition emails, and department shoutouts. We were still closing deals, bigger than ever, in fact, but the energy was shifting. Something colder, more calculated. I'd built a team that fought like a family. We were tight-knit. We celebrated each other. But suddenly, people were getting let go without warning. Middle managers with families fired over Zoom. And then the board made their biggest move. They hired Garrett Langston as permanent CEO. Garrett was everything the headlines love. Ex-Google, Ivy League, a tech wunderkind who talked in buzzwords and smiled like a billboard. At his first company-wide all-hands, he opened with, "Disruption is not a phase. It's our identity. If you don't evolve with the company, you'll be left behind." I knew right then, this man didn't build anything. He just replaces the builders. But I stayed focused. My job was to protect my team and deliver results. And we did. $47 million in net revenue across 3 quarters. My team accounted for more than half the company's income. We kept our heads down. We delivered. And still, things felt off. Garrett never once joined our team reviews. Never responded to strategy proposals. Never asked for a breakdown of where our revenue came from. But I heard whispers. One day, my assistant forwarded me an internal calendar invite she wasn't supposed to see, a closed-door meeting titled, "Legacy Restructure, Level 3 and 4 Leadership." I was Level 4. That was the second crack. But I still didn't panic. I believed the numbers would protect me. That the board would see reason. After all, who fires the person who brings in 60% of the company's money? Apparently, Garrett Langston does. Turns out, I'd been building the house, but someone else held the blueprint. And they were quietly designing a future that didn't include me. This is the suspense-building phase. Michael feels the shift. Emails go unanswered. Key meetings exclude him. Something feels off. The silence grows louder. A slow, creeping betrayal. I didn't lose everything overnight. It happened in phases, subtle, silent, and surgical. The first sign came when I was removed from a calendar invite I'd created. A quarterly strategy session with 2 major clients, accounts I'd personally secured years ago. When I reached out to the VP of Sales, she replied, "Garrett wants a more streamlined approach this quarter." Streamlined. Funny word, considering I built those relationships from scratch. One of those clients once told me I was the only reason they stayed after a failed product rollout. And now I wasn't even part of the meeting? I let it go. Then, my weekly check-in with the CFO got postponed indefinitely. No explanation. Just a 2-line email from his assistant. That week, I noticed something strange. My team Slack channel had a new observer added, Emily Cross, Garrett's chief of staff. She never spoke, never commented, just watched. She sat in on one of our calls. Silent camera. Muted mic, eyes like searchlights. I started to feel it. Not just in meetings, in the halls, in emails, in how people avoided eye contact. People I mentored. People I trusted. They began to act like I was already gone. The whispers began. Someone from HR bumped into me in the break room and froze, like I'd caught them doing something wrong. Another manager, one I'd helped get promoted, avoided sitting next to me during an offsite. And then came the big one. My access to the quarterly financial dashboard, the one I reviewed every week to track client performance, was revoked. Just like that. Password rejected. Permission denied. When I emailed IT, they said it was part of a system-wide update under the CO's directive. I knew what that meant. I was being cut out. They were building a case. I began working longer hours, desperate to stay visible. I compiled revenue reports. I shared team updates. I documented wins. I sent strategic memos to Garrett himself, all unanswered. He never responded. But late one evening, I was working on a proposal in the office, the only one left on the floor, when I heard voices in the boardroom. Garrett, Emily, a few others. They didn't know I was there. I couldn't hear everything, but one line floated through the door like a dagger. He's a relic. The numbers don't matter if the culture doesn't fit. I just sat there, frozen. A relic? I wasn't a relic. I was a builder. I was the one who kept this machine running when others clocked out. But Garrett didn't want builders. He wanted branders. People who looked good on magazine covers and gave TED Talks about leadership while others did the work. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, chilling. They didn't need a reason to get rid of me. They just needed a moment. And that moment came sooner than I expected. The next week, Garrett called me into a glass conference room. Just him. No HR rep, no pleasantries. He didn't even sit down. Michael, he said, we appreciate everything you've done, but we're moving in a different direction. Your role is being eliminated, effective immediately. Just like that. I blinked. I looked at him, waiting for some explanation. A reason. A mistake. Something human. But he gave me none. I don't understand, I said finally. My team brought in over half of the company's revenue this year. You know that, right? Garrett gave a polite, practiced smile. It's not just about numbers anymore. It's about vision. I felt something break inside me. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just disbelief. They escorted me out. No farewell email. No handover. No goodbye from the team I built. Just an empty box. And silence. I didn't sleep the first night. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, still wearing the same button-down shirt from that morning, now wrinkled and stained with sweat. My wife, Anna, asked what happened. I couldn't speak. I just handed her the severance letter. She read it 3 times. Then she said something I'll never forget. Did you do something wrong? That broke me. It wasn't an accusation. It was fear. Uncertainty. After everything I'd done to keep our life stable, even she couldn't understand why someone like me, the guy who worked late, skipped vacations, showed up to every company crisis, would be tossed out like a worn-out office chair. For 2 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. Emails poured in from colleagues, some fake sympathy, most silence. The company issued a vague internal memo calling it a leadership restructuring. No mention of my name. Just another grid line in the machine. I tried reaching out to one of the senior board members, someone I'd helped win a critical merger deal 5 years ago. No reply. Not even a bounce back. It was like I had never existed. That Friday night, I sat on the back porch, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. I looked out over the backyard I'd worked so hard to afford. The swing set I built for my daughter. The flower beds Anna planted every spring. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a ghost inside my own world. A failure. Not because I got fired, but because I didn't see it coming. Because I trusted people who smiled in my face while sharpening knives behind closed doors. Because I had no backup plan. No lawyer. No leverage. I gave them everything. It wasn't just that they fired me. It was how easily they erased me, like I was never there. Like 15 years of sweat, sacrifice, and loyalty could be deleted with a signature. This is the lowest point. Michael hits emotional rock bottom. Everything he built is gone. The betrayal has fully settled in. But beneath the silence, something starts to shift. And they gave me a box and a cold escort to the elevator. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at the last revenue report I'd prepared before being let go. It showed my team had exceeded their quarterly targets by 140%. We were literally carrying the company. Then I opened LinkedIn. And there it was. Garrett's new post. Excited to share our new vision for dynamic leadership at company name. Rebuilding the culture from the top down, together. The post had over 500 likes. One of the comments? From a junior exec I trained personally. Finally! The fresh start we all needed. My hand gripped the side of my desk so hard I thought it might snap. That was the moment. Not when I got fired. Not when I walked out with the box. Not even when Anna asked if I did something wrong. It was that LinkedIn post. That comment. That fake smile on Garrett's face. That was the moment I snapped, not in rage, not in despair, but in clarity. I realized they didn't win. They just played louder. They underestimated me because I didn't scream. Because I didn't post dramatic goodbye letters or call for attention. Because I walked away quietly. But that silence? That was me sharpening my sword. I didn't lose. I paused. And now, I wasn't planning a comeback. I was planning an audit. This is the planning arc, full of tension, slow reveals, and a sense of cold control. Michael isn't loud. He's surgical. And Garrett? He never sees it coming. The next morning, I shaved, put on a fresh black button-down, sat at my desk, and opened a new file titled Countermeasures. Garrett thought he fired a regular man. He didn't know I used to play chess for state tournaments in college. I didn't always win, but I never lost the same way twice. And this time, I had 3 advantages: data, documentation, silence. I started with emails. Pulled every exchange I'd ever had with Garrett. The tone shift was obvious. In the beginning, he'd CC me on everything, decisions, strategies, approvals. But 2 weeks before I was let go, those emails stopped. Instead, I saw a thread between Garrett and a VP I once mentored, discussing a restructuring idea. I wasn't included in that thread, but it was about my department. They weren't just replacing me. They were staging me out. I began digging deeper. I still had access to the shared Google Drive folder I'd built for team documentation. And Garrett, in his arrogance, hadn't changed any permissions. I pulled performance reports, team reviews, forecast models, all with timestamps and author tags. My team had generated 61.4% of the total company revenue in the last fiscal year. And Garrett? His Innovation Task Force had produced a negative return, overspending by $2.3 million on failed pilot projects. That gave me ammunition, but I needed leverage. So I called an old friend, a former legal analyst who now worked in corporate compliance. I asked one simple question. What happens when a new CEO fires someone responsible for over half the company's revenue, without cause, during a pending board review? There was a long pause. Then she said, "Depends. Was the review supposed to confirm that your department was the company's most valuable asset?" I didn't answer. She got the message. 2 days later, I had 3 legal options. Wrongful termination claim under state labor law. Breach of fiduciary duty against the board, if I could prove they were misled. SEC whistleblower inquiry, if fraud or manipulation was involved in shareholder reports. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was armed. But I didn't move yet. I went quiet. I removed myself from all social channels. Changed my phone number. Used a secondary email account to communicate only with legal contacts. I even created a burner LinkedIn profile, not to post, but to watch. Meanwhile, Garrett kept posting like a peacock at a parade. Articles, quotes, taglines. We're building a fearless future. Sometimes the old must fall for new ideas to rise. I took screenshots of everything. But the turning point came 2 weeks later. My old team leader, Rachel, reached out discreetly. She was furious. Said that since I'd been fired, Garrett had shifted the company's budget without telling anyone. Marketing got gutted. Sales targets were raised 40%. And worst of all, the bonus pool? Gone. Her words stuck with me. They're cannibalizing everything we built. And no one knows why. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about me. Garrett was trying to build a dictatorship, using buzzwords and cuts disguised as strategy. The board had no idea because he was feeding them dressed-up numbers, many of which were based on my department's legacy results. He was using my work to justify his rule. I contacted a friend at a national business journal, anonymously. Gave him just enough breadcrumbs. A 61% revenue-generating department leader terminated without cause. Internal shifts in budget transparency. A pattern of reshuffling tied to a new executive with no industry experience. He was intrigued. I ended the call with one line. You'll want to talk to Rachel. 2 days later, the story dropped. It didn't name names. But anyone inside the company, or even near the board, knew exactly who it was about. The fallout? Immediate. One board member reached out to me through an encrypted app. He asked if we could talk. Not for an official statement, just to understand your side. I smiled. I said I'd talk, but only on Zoom, with my legal counsel present. Garrett thought I'd vanish quietly. Instead, I was about to become the loudest silence the board had ever heard. This is the payoff. The audience gets the full emotional release, watching a corrupt man fall and a calm, strategic mind deliver poetic justice. The Zoom call was scheduled for 9 a.m. I logged in at 8:58. My lawyer was already there, silent, camera off. At exactly 9 o'clock, the screen populated with 5 other boxes. All board members. One of them, Harold Brewster, the chairman, looked like he hadn't slept. He spoke first. Michael, thank you for agreeing to speak. We're not here to litigate anything today. This is exploratory. I nodded. I understand. I'd like to record the call. They all agreed. I began calmly. I want to be clear. I'm not seeking revenge. I'm not interested in my old position. But what I do care about is truth. And then I dropped it. Garrett manipulated internal financials, fired key personnel under false pretenses, and used the legacy performance of my department to inflate projections. I have proof. There was silence. Then I shared screen. Slide 1. Revenue breakdown by department, last 4 quarters. Slide 2. Timeline of my termination versus forecast shifts. Slide 3. Garrett's email trail, all legally obtained, carefully redacted. Slide 4. A snapshot of his public claims, contrasted with actual results. Their faces changed. Some leaned forward. Others scribbled. One visibly mouthed, "Jesus." Then I dropped the nuclear detail. I was also contacted by a journalist. Off the record. He was tipped off anonymously. I don't know what direction the story will take next, but I do know this. I paused. If Garrett remains CO, I will be compelled to provide a formal statement, including documentation. The chairman's jaw clenched. And if he doesn't? I disappear, I said. Completely. The fallout was fast. Garrett was asked to take a temporary leave that afternoon. Internally, it was positioned as a wellness break. But by week's end, he was scrubbed from the company website. The company didn't issue a public statement. They couldn't risk it. But I knew what happened behind closed doors. A board inquiry confirmed Garrett had misrepresented projections. His Innovation Task Force was dissolved. The budget realigned to mirror the original structure, the one I created. And Rachel? She was promoted to lead. I didn't celebrate. Not in the traditional sense. Instead, I took a walk in the same park I used to go to during lunch breaks. The wind was calm. The air was sharp. I sat on a bench and thought about every humiliating second. The silence, the betrayal, the disbelief. And then I smiled. Because I didn't fight fire with fire. I fought it with fact. People think revenge is loud. That it screams. But real revenge? It's quiet. It moves like a shadow. Documents everything. Waits. And when it strikes, it doesn't shout. It just removes everything the enemy ever stood on, and watches them collapse from the weight of their own lies. Garrett fired me thinking I was powerless. He didn't realize. You can't fire the man who built the floor beneath your feet. This is where the emotion deepens. It's not just about winning, it's about healing, rebuilding, and rising with quiet strength. The viewer should feel inspired, not just entertained. It's been 13 months since that board meeting. I never went back to the company. Rachel kept her promise. She rebuilt the department from within. Last I heard, it's doing even better than before. She sends me the occasional update. A chart. A picture. Once, a simple message. Still your blueprint. Just a new architect. That one made me tear up. So where did I go? I took time off, real time. Not the kind where your phone still dings. I traveled upstate to a small cabin my grandfather left me. No Wi-Fi. No signal. Just trees, birds, and a wood-burning stove that took a while to get used to. I hiked. I read. I wrote pages and pages of things I'll probably never publish, but needed to say. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't chasing anything. Looking back, I don't hate Garrett. I don't even think about him much. What he did was cruel, but it wasn't original. Power corrupts. Ego blinds. And men like him, They rise fast and fall even faster. But I do think about myself and the version of me that stayed quiet too long. I think about how much I tolerated. How often I said, "It's just business." How many hours I poured into a system that only saw me as a metric. I think about the cost of silence. And how truth costs something too. Direct hit final reflection. If you're watching this and you're in a place like I was, overworked, overlooked, undervalued, I want you to remember something. You are not powerless. Not because you can shout louder. Not because you can swing harder. But because you know the truth. And the truth, when you carry it with patience, can move mountains without making a sound. Clapperboard Soft CDA, call to action. If this story reminded you of your own journey, if you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or replaced, you're not alone. Drop a comment. Share your story. Let's build a space where truth wins. Quietly. Calmly. Completely. Subscribe if you're ready for more stories like this, because in a world full of noise, this channel is about something different. Justice that whispers and hits like thunder. They fired me thinking they ended my story. But really, they just gave me the silence I needed to write the next chapter, my way.